Hello and welcome to the Broad Street Hockey Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gilbert. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, the juking, the dancing, the Joe
Good jiving.
DeMarini.
Yeah,
How we doing, Joe?
I'm doing great. I just sculled a cup of tea before this, so the caffeine just kicked in right when we started recording. I'm ready to go.
I say a happy Go Birds Sunday to you. Birds kick off here in about 15 minutes. So,
Sure.
hopefully we'll get some people watching the stream early on and maybe fade a little bit towards the end there. But we can talk about our own birds here, the Flyers. They're flying things as well here. 2-1 on their 3 games since we last recorded, beating the 2 bad teams, Columbus, Detroit, losing in Minnesota yesterday, which,
what can
a little
you do?
bit annoying, but yeah, it's the Wild. The Wild are a pretty good hockey team right now. Here at the top show, make sure you are subscribed to the Broad Street Hockey Podcast feed on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and review if that is on Apple. Also, like and comment on YouTube. All that stuff helps the show grow. And also, shout out to Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. I had an idea to just come on the show and just try to be angry and be one of those angry fans, but I figured I might save that for next week with the airing of the grievances. I'm not sure if Steve Jaco is going to do a separate episode, but considering having him on for that, and Flyers Festivus, BSH Festivus with PHIY will be at the pub at Xfinity Live, the former Willie's pub, where the Flyers draft party in 2022. When they traded Ristolainen. Was that 22 or 21? One of those two there.
22 was Gauthier. 21 was when they traded the pick.
2021 when they traded for Ristolainen. Did not have a pick there. But yeah, back there at Xfinity Live for the Flyers-Penguins game on the 23rd. Plenty of good stuff going on there. So make sure you join us out there. Yeah. Where do you want to start here, Joe? You want to just... One thing from the past week. What's your big thing from the past week?
The Cam Fowler trade, I think, is if we're going big picture, I think that's important. And you mentioned the guy that I wanted to compare him to, which is Rasmus Ristolainen. So Cam Fowler is the veteran defenseman formerly of the Anaheim Ducks. He's now a St. Louis Blue, and the Blues traded a 2nd-round pick and a D prospect for Cam Fowler and a 5th-round pick, I think the other part was. Something like that, some mid-late round pick. Fowler has 1 year left on his contract. The Ducks are retaining some percentage to make his contract worth $4 million AAV flat. The reason this is something to talk about here is Rasmus Ristolainen is a guy that has 2 years left on his deal at $5.1 million, and it's looking like there's a trade market for him. My question basically, Gilbs, is if this was the return, retaining whatever X% of salary to make it $4 million even, if your return was a 2nd-round pick and a just kind of okay defense prospect, would you do that trade?
No, not even close. Cam Fowler is 3 years older than Rasmus Ristolainen, kind of just fading away there in Anaheim, clearly as the odd man out as they look to rebuild. He's left-hand shot, more of a puck-moving defenseman, which tend to be more available come the trade deadline. And Ristolainen, right-hand shot, very coveted, 6'4", physical game, going to be coveted there in the trade market. And at this point, it's getting to the point where you almost want to see the Flyers keep him because they've transformed him into this player, but he's blocking Drysdale, he's blocking Bonk, he's blocking all these guys potentially coming up. So I need a 1st-round pick or bust for Ristolainen. And honestly, I don't know if I'd do it straight up for a 1st-round pick, because the contract's not even that bad right now, especially with it going up potentially more than expected in the next few years. It's no longer a liability. I think the contract there is an asset. And one of the teams that I've heard, I think Friedman and other guys talking about, is that Vancouver. They have Philip Fronek is out for a little bit here. and they want a defenseman with term. So I feel like Ristolainen could be a good fit there. Not sure exactly how
they already have Tyler Myers, who's like the same thing.
Don't insult Rasmus Ristolainen with Tyler. Just not all tall defensemen are the same, Joe. Not all tall people are the same, Joe. Tyler Myers does not play nearly a physical game. Yeah, he's as big. I think he is playing top pair with Quinn Hughes, who Hughes. I mean, him and McCarr for the North is going to be a good battle there. But
it's going to be a good fight. Yeah, go ahead.
I just don't think the Fowler Ristolainen comparison is there for the Flyers right now.
I would agree. I would not take that deal. The only argument is that Cam Fowler. If I'm just going to go through Hockey Viz, they have their model has what's called synthetic goals (SG), and Cam Fowler over the course of his career was a top 4 defenseman for many more years than Rasmus Ristolainen has. Like, he has a track record of being a better performing defenseman than Risto. So like, there's value in that past track record. Of course, his value's gone down because he's been playing on a really crappy Ducks team, but that's just to be expected. So I don't know if Risto, maybe other GMs are scared that he's going to regress back to what he was before Bradshaw and John Tortorella started working with him.
Yeah, I mean, Ristolainen might be one of the top defensemen on the market this trade season. I don't know if there's any pending free agents. I know that ESPN put out like a trade tiers thing that they have, but yeah, I think Ristolainen is going to be one of the most sought after guys, which is why I said, Four Nations tournament could be a great showcase for him. Also saw something that teams may look to trade their players before Four Nations in case they're injured. But also teams aren't going to want to trade for players before Four Nations, or maybe there'll be some sort of conditions on it or whatnot. So Cam Fowler, good to see that the trade market being active, another defenseman being moved is good news for the Flyers, because we've seen Emil Andre now healthy scratch in back-to-back games, so they need to move something at some point.
I think it's important to remember too, the Flyers are not compelled to move Risto because he has term. Like, if a team wants Ristolainen now, it's like, well, you're going to have to pay for him because he's not walking in the summer for nothing. We have him for another 2 years. Like, if you really want him, you got to pony up. So that's fine. And that's really it for the league news that I have this week.
Yeah, I think the fact that he is under contract for 2 more years, teams, it could go both ways for teams. Maybe they'll be like, all right, we'll wait till the offseason, do a bigger trade around the draft. Or they'll be like, all right, let's get him in here now. He's going to be with our team for 2 more years. Let's get him here. Let's get him for, a third cup run potentially for one of those big teams up there. So, yeah, Ristolainen going to be a key name to watch in the trade market, which is refreshing because it's been Scott Laughton and Sean Walker last year, of course. Morgan Frost is going to be out there, but I think Ristolainen is going to be a sought-after guy out there.
Yeah.
The only other news I had, we talked about Four Nations last week. Team Canada for the World Juniors. Three Flyers on there. Three key Flyers: Jet Luchenko, Oliver Blanc, and Carson Bjarnason.
Sorry, Barkey. Sorry, Denver.
Barkey got cut there. I guess they didn't want his bark. I know he's been a big leader for London there, but I haven't read enough to see if Bjarnason's going to be the starter. But I know they tend to rotate. So I mean, if he has a good game or two, he could end up, playing in a medal game for Canada.
Wouldn't that be fun? It's a bummer for Barkey, but he had mono to start the season, and he was slow to start the season. Bad start, real hard to get yourself in the mix for Team Canada. It's a real drag. So, hey, on the bright side, 3 Flyers going to Team Canada. But even though, we're not rebuilding, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. And I think that, that's going to be the Flyers team for the World Juniors. I don't think they have anyone on Team USA. Not sure if they have any European guys. They probably have a few European guys here or there, but I mean,
I think Jack Berglund and Heikki Ruohonen have a chance to make their respective nations.
Okay, yeah, so that's what, Sweden and Finland.
I think Berglund is Sweden, and I think Ruohonen is Finland.
Yeah,
I don't know if they'd be in top line roles or anything, but they could be depth guys on those rosters maybe. So we'll see. I don't think they've announced those rosters yet, though.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, World Juniors is always fun to watch. So, having a rooting interest in one or two players even is always good there.
Yeah.
And speaking of World Juniors, US World Junior alumni, I believe, or yeah, from a few years ago, Cole Knuble has kind of been flying under the radar at Notre Dame there. 18 points in 14 games, had 20 points in 36 games last year in his freshman year. So, I mean, 4th round pick, obviously has the Knuble pedigree, could be a good bottom 6 guy for the Flyers, maybe with a higher ceiling. So he's someone that tends to be not talked about too much. So good to see him playing well for Notre Dame there.
It'll come down to his skating, I believe. He was a overager when they drafted him, right? I think he was an overager when they drafted him. So he got passed over because his skating was real bad, and then he worked on it, and then he got picked.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Notre Dame roster, he leads them 18 points in 14 games. You got, a few other NHL prospects that I haven't really heard of here. Justin Janik, Danny Nelson, 14, 13 points. So yeah, Knuble is playing center apparently. So we'll see if that translates to anything at the NHL level.
Would be cool.
Someone whose game has translated very well to the NHL level in his first NHL season is Matvei Michkov. He had his point streak broken in the Detroit game. I don't think he got a point in the Minnesota game either. So, he's ice cold right now as the weather turns here in Philadelphia. But Matvei Michkov, I mean, first and foremost, I don't know how I was very rusty. I completely forgot to bring up his autograph of the water bottle last episode. Then after that, Tortorella, his birthday, Tortorella came out and you're turning 20 in America. Like what can you do now? There's nothing else you can do now. But yeah, and then the water bottle thing. Apparently, it was a kid who's like bilingual and also speaks Russian, and asked him before the period ended, and he said after. So it was good there. I got the flyover.
I just heard it.
Yep, my house right now. But yeah, that thing. Torts kind of played dumb with that. Love to see just the rock star shit from Matvei Michkov. And then more rock star shit in Thursday night's game. Trying to Michigan before Cam Talbot just absolutely robbed him on a one-time chance. So many good chances there in that game. But that Michigan, I was sitting behind the net upper level. I saw it unfold. It was close. It was very close there.
Apparently Cam Talbot stared him down afterwards too. Like I'm like, oh boy, pissing off the goalies. No, that was sick. That was fun. What's really been great is that Michkov's 5-on-5 game has improved dramatically over the last 2-3 weeks. I don't have the exact numbers, but a couple games ago he was looking at over 60% of the expected goals for percentage over the past 8 or 9 games. You can watch him learning in real time, and it's just beautiful to watch, man. It's just so fun.
Yeah, it's great to watch. And one thing I've noticed with Michkov and with the Flyers in general is they're trying to do more stretch passes now, which opens up the neutral zone, opens up more zone entry opportunities. And just what he does with the puck when it's on a stick, when he's his patience waiting for guys to join the rush with him. It's fun to watch, really fun to watch here. And looking at his expected goals for relative game log, not a good game there in Minnesota, -8, but before that, positive for 4 games, including hugely there in against Utah and in Boston in the past few games. So, yeah, yep. I talked about it last show for a little bit. The Flyers right now have 4 lines that are rolling. They found 4 combinations that work. They're healthy, so hopefully they can work on it in practice during these 3 days off here and get going into the holiday break.
Yeah, I just found the stats from the preview over at broadsthockey.com. Please like and subscribe. Michkov going into the Detroit game had a 56.63 Corsi for percentage over the past 8 games, the previous 8 games, and a 68.66 expected goals for percentage over the previous 8 games going into the Detroit one. I don't know, man. That sounds pretty good. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, it seems pretty decent. I don't know if he could be saving Morgan Frost's future in Philadelphia. I mean, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we were talking about, Morgan Frost. There was an article this week on Broad Street Hockey, I believe, by Jacob Russell, I think, saying that, Morgan Frost being traded is inevitable, but and it probably is. He does need a change of scenery. He's one of the guys that teams around the league like. But him, Tippett, and Michkov now have an expected goals for percentage of 58.8 in 120 minutes together. So they're looking good there with Morgan Frost as a 2C, 3C. I know Torch says he doesn't like to number or name the lines, but it's second most minutes in most games.
Yep. Although for Michkov, he does have to cool it a little bit. That penalty with DeBrincat to start the third period was ill-advised. It worked out, but maybe don't, punch Macklin Celebrini in the face. Don't mix it up with Alex DeBrincat. Don't keep that fire, but don't leave your team at a disadvantage because of it. They've been struggling with that the past month, all as a team. So, just clean it up a little.
You do like to see it. Like the fans love to see it, obviously, and being physical. But you also, and this season, sure, like the games don't actually matter, but he can't be getting a reputation as a guy that's going to be a hothead and someone that refs can target. Because I mean, we've seen Russian players, not necessarily get the best treatment either on the ice or off the ice in terms of awards voting. So, good to see for Flyers fans, but maybe in the long run, he needs to rein it in, learn a little bit from TK about how to get some sneaky shots in instead of the ones right in front.
I'm not worried. He'll figure it out.
Yeah. I can't imagine Tortorella likes that. Tortorella also doesn't like the Michigan in today's game, but he admitted after on practice on Friday that he's lost the damn battle with the Michigan attempts. Not specifically talking about Matvei Michkov. That's what my headline was on Broad Street Hockey, just to get the SEO in there. But I mean, he talked about it back when he was on ESPN as an analyst when Trevor Zegras did the Michigan flip pass to Sonny Milano, and they did it on that. And he makes valid points that early in the year he was doing it too often.
Yes.
It was just turnovers. But when it's there, I mean, it's a great scoring opportunity. If he has the room, the defensemen have to be aware of it, which opens up other opportunities. So he's a smart enough player where I trust him, and I'm happy that Tortorella has come around to the point where he trusts his star player enough to kind of rein it in and be more selective in using it.
Whenever anyone brings up the Torts commenting on the Zegras play, I always feel compelled to say that a day or two later, Torts got back on ESPN and it's like, man, you guys, you really fucked that up for me. And he's like, I texted with Zegras, I think he called him or something, and he was like, look, I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong or a bad player or anything like that. He's like, look, it's a part of the game. I just don't think it's great. And as far as it concerns Michkov, Torts' approach is just, you are such a good player and so dangerous from below the goal line. Maybe consider that there's a better pass or a better play there than just trying to Michigan. So I think that was what he was trying to get across to Matvei. It's like, look, you're going to do it. I'm not going to tell you not to. But before you do, make sure you consider that there might be a better play first before you try and style like that. So I think we've seen that. That's his first attempt in quite a while, I would say. So, I'm sure that in his supercomputer brain or whatever, he was aware of everyone on the ice, and he's like, this is the best possible option, and gave it a try. So,
yeah, I mean, you have to. Yeah, I completely agree with Torts. You have to weigh your options. But looking at the tweet from Broad Street Hockey of it, there were 3 Red Wings in front of the net. One had Nick Seeler completely tied up. One was protecting the slot, and Michkov was alone behind the net. So, and I think it was a delayed penalty, so there was no true risk in doing it. So, yeah, if it's there and your option in front of the net is Nick Seeler, I mean, Michkov has seen plenty of his blind passes into the slot just go to the other team. Yeah. And if you have the opportunity there, I'm happy for him to take it there.
Sure. But just, he's skilled enough that, hey, maybe there's a better option. That's really all I think Torts was trying to get across is just take a second and consider a better option before you go for it.
Yeah, exactly there. But I mean, the big story of that Red Wings game: Flyers win 4-1. Scott Laughton wins 4-1. 4 booms for Scott Laughton there. I mean,
Boom, 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 boom.
the video of him in the locker room after the game, like just all
So
the
good.
guys giving him a standing ovation and like huddling around him. They give him a standing ovation again. Like you can see Laughton like start to like tear up and like get completely overwhelmed for a second before composing himself. Like you watch that video and you're like, the Flyers cannot trade this guy. And
No.
I mean, that's going to be a key moment in his future as a Flyer, one way or another. Because either that's like, all right, that's our guy. He's a Flyer for life. As long as he's going to sign a team friendly contract after this one, he can stay here. On the flip side, on the contrary, here, other GMs, especially GMs of good teams that maybe have some locker room issues, are seeing that video and they're being like, look at this middling team rallying around this guy. What if this guy can come in, bring in Laughton, bring in someone else in the Flyers to get a friend, maybe, maybe a Farabee, depending on the team, maybe a Frost, maybe a Ristolainen, and just get those guys in the room like a Scott Laughton. Like, I would love to see him end his career in Philadelphia as a Flyer.
Yeah.
But would you also even more like to see him lift a cup? Because, I mean, in all honesty, it's probably not going to be in Philadelphia. Maybe he goes cup chasing. He's a free agent, after next year, I want to say. So maybe
Right.
you trade him somewhere this year. He goes cup chasing with a good team this year and next year and comes back to Philly in 2 years. But, I mean, people talk about that. That rarely happens. But I don't know.
Gilbs,
That's
come on.
a key moment for Scott Laughton.
July 1st is going to hit and they're going to extend him. Look, you know what? I am totally okay if he's going to be a Flyer for life. If he signs like the same contract as this one, like a $3 million a year contract for 5 years, fine. He is a bottom sixer. He knows his role. Unless someone is willing to overpay, and I mean overpay, I'm talking like Tim Stützle for Scott Laughton and Joel Farabee.
Stop it.
You know, I'm thinking big picture here. If there is a trade like that available, you do it. But I don't think anyone is going to make that kind of offer. I also think we overvalue Laughton because we see what he does in the locker room and we've seen him his entire career. Look, if he's going to get traded, I don't think he's going to bring you back exactly what you think he's worth. If a team's willing to overpay, you got to consider it. But if they're not going to overpay, if he's just going to be a bottom of the lineup glue guy for the rest of his career and he's happy with that and the Flyers are happy with that, there's worse things in the world.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Scott Laughton, yeah, we definitely overvalue him. The Flyers overvalue him. I think Briere and or Jones have come out and say, like, yeah, we're not trading him for fair value. You're going to have to overpay for Scott Laughton.
Exactly.
And they reportedly passed up 2 first-round picks in Briere's first offseason.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you do first for first-round pick for Scott Laughton? I think you have to take that. No, not at this point. Scott Laughton for like a Shane Pinto or like a Ridley Greig there, like a younger center, hasn't quite met their potential. Laughton goes to a team where he can be a big add to the culture there.
I don't know, man. It's so difficult to. I don't think that's an overpay for Scott Laughton. I think that's what they consider fair value, like an overpay.
Are you saying you wouldn't do a first-round pick for Laughton, or you don't think the Flyers would?
I don't think I would, and I definitely don't think the Flyers would. Look, you look at all of these other rebuilding teams in the league, and we're going to get into them because I've got a lot of thoughts on this, but you look at the Blackhawks, their franchise cornerstones, Kane and Taves, got kicked to the curb. You look at the Ducks, Getzlaf retired, and there's like no historical bridge player there. You look at the Sabres, who's the bridge player there? Who is the guy, the glue guy that's been through it all and is still there? It was Kyle Okposo, but they traded him to Florida last year and he won a cup. So, Maybe I don't know. It depends on the state of the Flyers locker room. Like if the locker room can sustain this culture without him, then maybe you consider this stuff. But if the locker room is still not cemented, you can't do it yet.
I think the locker room is cemented. I don't think that is a point of contention anymore. I think that's like, okay, the locker room's cemented. We love Laughton here. We need to be over, like, but that's still, it's not like, all right, it's not like something like you bring in temporarily. All right, he fixed the locker room. We can trade him now. Like, he fixed the locker room. He's a huge part of the locker room. He's a huge part of the community and the city and the team. That is something that you really can't measure. But like you said, you can measure it when you look at other rebuilds that haven't quite been as successful. Like you said, Chicago, sure, they have Connor Bedard, but there's no one. They brought back Teravainen this year. I thought that was a good move by them, but there's no one like from the Kane and Taves era, like not even a defenseman, or not even like a depth guy, like
Seth
a
Jones.
No, Seth Jones came in too late. Like let me look at the Blackhawks roster right now, which is definitely like Teravainen is the guy if he was there for the whole time. Yeah, I mean, looking at their team, it's just it's not good.
It's a real who's who of hodgepodge. It's bad.
Yet they are somehow up 3-2 on the Islanders in the second period currently.
Ooh, are they?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, that's been a bad rebuild. We just saw the Red Wings, like we've shat on them so many times on this show. The Cop contract, the Comfort contract. They had Tarasenko,
Sherratt.
Sherratt's not been good. Patrick Kane bringing him in, not sure what they're doing there. Yeah, I mean that Dylan Larkin as their 1C is not a 1C. Lucas Raymond's not really panning out.
Hey, Dylan Larkin could be my 1C any day.
I mean, he's not one of the better 1Cs in the league. Like he's
average.
He's a 2C on a good team. He's topped out 79, 73, 69 points twice. Like he's 24 points in 30 games. I think, for a 15th overall pick, I guess that's okay, but they haven't been able to build around him. Mo Seider, obviously a great defenseman, but they haven't
look, Dylan Larkin does not have help around him until like recently has he had any help around him. He is a 1C. He is a first line setter.
Okay, whatever. I'll concede that point. Just put the Red Wings haven't built around him, which is a key thing in a rebuild.
Yeah.
Rather than going for, even if you're gonna go out and pay some free agents, pay good free agents. Don't pay Andrew Copp and JT Compher. Looking at the Puckpedia here is just
Justin Holl, Ben Sherratt, sending Jake Wallman away for nothing.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, so many modified no trade clauses for DeBrincat, Copp, Compher. Like these old guys, they're just doing nothing with. So yeah, Red Wings. We just saw the Flyers beat them. They have, not many good young players. You touched on the Blackhawks. Anaheim has completely stalled. You said Sens are interesting because it seems like they're always a trade or two away, or like a few losses away from a big trade that could change things for them. But they're right there in the playoff hunt now with the Flyers. I think they're actually in a playoff spot right now by percentage points over, not by percentage points, by points, but not by percentage points over the Rangers. And then the Sabres. The Sabres are just a complete shit show. We've seen them trade away Eichel. We've seen them trade away Reinhart, Middlestat, Ristolainen.
Yeah.
Like go down the list and you just see all these players that leave Buffalo and become better players. So, and that's an organization that Danny Briere played with. He has a relationship with their GM with the Eric Johnson trade last year. And that's where I think the Flyers need to go to solve their center issue for now.
Okay. I mean, I don't think any. I know you're on the Dylan Cousins hype train, but
I'm on the Tage Thompson hype train, but they're not going to trade Tage Thompson.
Tage Thompson's 27. No.
Okay,
he doesn't fit.
All right. I mean, let me see their current cap situation. When is Tage Thompson under contract till? Tage Thompson
2030
is $7 million until 2030. Also $7 million until 2030 is the 23-year-old Dylan Cousins, who already has a 30-goal season under his belt a few years ago. He had 31 goals, 37 assists, 68 points in 81 games. Took a huge step back last year, 47 points in 79 games. Now has 13 points in 30 games this season. Shooting percentage has dropped quite a bit from 14.7 in that 31 goal season. But like, you look at him, I don't watch Sabres games. Obviously, but like looking at him, 6'3", 200 pounds, looking at his scouting reports coming out of the draft, he sounds like a player that would thrive in John Tortorella's system. Like, he's going to finish checks, decent skater, can play a two-way game, and he's 6'3". The Flyers, I mean, Sean Couturier is a big center, but outside of him, they have Frost, Paling, I mean, Cates are all kind of small. So I feel like getting a big center to play with Michkov could definitely open up some space for him. And, you know, Morgan Frost could be the piece to go back as one of the key pieces.
I'm not sold on Dylan Cousins as like the solution. Like this, I'm all for taking risks, and eventually they're going to have to. But a guy signed at 7.1 until 2030 who has had just like not the greatest 2 seasons in a row. I don't know, man. It depends on the price. It would depend entirely on how much you'd have to give up to get him.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I would. And yeah, that is the risk. He's a 7.1 million until 2030. No move protection until 2027 when he has a 5-team no trade clause. So if he doesn't pan out, they could dump him if they need to. 23 years old though, and like I said, we've seen these players leave Buffalo and become better players.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if you give them Frost, who's, you know, similar age, similar scenario where he needs to change the scenery, and then maybe you know, a Syracuse boy, Joel Farabee there, $5 million, get that off the books. You know, would they consider trading Owen Tippett? Maybe they would have to do that in a trade for Tage Thompson. But I mean, to see people whisper about contract. I mean, I think he's going to be fine. But
he's fine. Yeah.
He's just the only other option, like with money, in case the Flyers want to get out of quote unquote a big contract if they're bringing in Cousins, or maybe they just trade Risto in that deal and make it a 3-way deal with you know, get some 3-way going back to Buffalo there. But
send Risto back to Buffalo.
Yeah, you know, why not? Or 3-way and Buffalo can get something else. But
okay,
yeah, I mean, Dylan Cousins. Like, no, I don't think he's the solution or the answer or whatever. But if he can be a 2C, Couturier can be 3C, Luchenko comes up to be another 2C in a year or two, like, the Flyers will have that depth, and you can win with superstar wingers and like just center depth. Like, and that's might be what the Flyers have to do with Michkov, and then build from the back out.
Okay. I'm not sold on it, but you know, if they made a deal and it wasn't like too much to give up, okay, I'd be into it. I don't know. I'm just not sold on Dylan Cousins. That's really the crux of it.
Well, it's rare it's rare that a player becomes available where you're like, okay, I'm sold on him. He is a 1C. Like when I did my article back in August about like how teams get their 1Cs, it's usually a high draft pick. So if the Flyers are, you know, confident, committed to getting that top line center through the draft, whether it's Luchenko, whether it's this year, whether it's getting 2 guys in the first round this year to see if any of them pan out, like, you get your 1C through the draft or by him falling into your lap. You can get 2Cs like Cousins if you take a little bit of a risk. I agree, you know, it might not be the time for the risk because we've talked about it with the Jiricek thing. Like, I don't love the $7 million contract through 2030. It's not something that's great, but with the cap going up and with the Flyers on their timeline right now, like for the majority of that contract, the Flyers are going to have deals, you know, that they can kind of take advantage of. Michkov at $1 million through 27. Obviously, he has performance bonuses. Forster's an RFA. Cam York's going to be underpaid for the next few years. I mean, Farabee at $5 million is fine. Frost, if they keep him, will be underpaid. Like Brink will have a bridge or a decent pay raise in 27. Like
I'm not worried. I'm not worried about it short term. If they're desperate, they can move Ryan Ellis to LTIR. That's always available to them, and that's immediately like most of a Dylan Cousins contract.
Well, I'm not worried short term either. I'm worried like, okay, in like 27, 28, like when the Flyers should be hopefully be like, okay, we get to make the playoffs this year, if not more, like you'll still have like that's the last one of Sanheim still 6.2. That'll be an underpay. Ristolainen's off the books if they still have him. Like they have these guys that'll be on bridge deals or their first deals where they're be able to, you know, go out still, get a guy like Cousins, go out, get a free agent, and take advantage of these underpaid, you know, young superstars.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, he's no Tim Stützle.
he's no Tim Stützle would be great. Like Tim Stützle would be great. Like in Ottawa, Josh Norris would be great. But centers. I mean, Elias Pettersson's still my pie in the sky guy because I know he's too soft for Vancouver, which may not be good for Philadelphia. But
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. You know, and it's not like Jack Eichel or Matthew Tkachuk become available too often.
I know. This is actually a pretty good transition. I want to do like a little bit of a vibe check on the rebuild. Like how are you feeling now? We're about a year and a half into it. Like how is it like sitting with you?
Like, I'm extremely happy with it. Like
you're happy with it so far?
Very happy with the rebuild. Like
okay.
Like are you asking me to like grade it? Like give an emotion? Like rank like on 1 to 10? Like probably an 8, if not more. Like it's
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually right there with you. I'm pretty high on this. Like, and it's crept up steadily since the beginning. Like I would probably say I was a 5 or a 6 like a year and a half ago, and I'm probably with you at like an 8 now. So yeah, the reason I want to get this vibe check is because about a week or so ago over at The Athletic, Mark Lazarus, who's the beat reporter for the Chicago Blackhawks, wrote an article that was basically like, what the hell are we doing here? Like this team is unwatchable. They stink. The players are tuned out. The veterans just seem to be flat. Like the organization kicked franchise cornerstones Kane and Taves to the curb. Does any of this matter? Like, is this team so far gone that even when these good prospects that we tanked to get are in their prime, is it going to be enough to be relevant? And we talked about a couple of the other teams. The Sabres have been rebuilding for almost a decade and a half. They're in free fall right now on a 9-game losing streak. The Red Wings have just floundered. The Sens are all over the place. The Ducks, like there's rumors that the Ducks players are just already tuning out Greg Cronin, and he was hired last summer. The Chicago Blackhawks just fired their coach like 2 weeks ago. And like the vibes in these locker rooms sound terrible. They sound awful. It sounds like there's like nobody's having fun. Nothing is good. Well, guess what? The Flyers have the vibes. They have been able to build the vibes. And maybe there's a lot more to be said for that than we give it credit for. But yeah, the only rebuild I might actually believe in is San Jose's. I feel like the Sharks might be cooking something. Like Celebrini rules. They've got Sam Dickinson on the way. They've got some other young talent in like Will Smith, Eklund, and some other guys in the pipeline. Like Askarov, they went out and got like their potential franchise goaltender. Like I think San Jose's cooking something. And the vibes coming out of the Sharks seem a lot better than some of these other rebuilding teams. But yeah, I like if the Flyers had tanked, I think we'd all be absolutely miserable right now. We would just be devastatingly miserable, and even with the plethora of like hotshot prospects in the system, we'd still be like, wow, this really sucks.
Absolutely, yeah, we would be completely miserable. I've been thinking about it recently. Like even with Saturday's loss to Minnesota, like if the Flyers were a competitive team, that would be like, oh, those were points that the Flyers needed to get with with Michkov blocking Konecny's shot, with the all those saves that Fleury made. But yeah, otherwise, on the opposite end, if the Flyers were tanking, you wouldn't care. And like, I know Philadelphia sports fans love misery. They love to complain. They love when things are going to shit. But that's just not, it's not what the Flyers are doing. And it doesn't make sense. And I wrote an article just over 1 year ago, December 14th, 2023, on broadstreethockey.com. Why the Flyers playing competitive hockey is good for the rebuild. Because, you know, culture stuff, you can actually analyze players, how they perform in big moments. You have leverage when teams come calling for your players. They're not like, okay, this guy's on a big contract, you want to trade him. Like, okay, whatever. Like, you have all of these points to be made. And yeah, I don't see a rebuild that's been going well. Like, it's been pretty consistently these teams in the playoffs. Like, they've been the same 4 or 5 teams competing for the cup for the last better half of a decade, since like the Blackhawks. I mean, you had the Lightning, who obviously get advantage from stuff. Vegas, Florida, like all the non-income tax states, I guess. But the Flyers have to do it differently, and that's and we talked about it before. Like, the Flyers have that brand, that family, where like, okay, it would be so off-brand for the Flyers if they had just like, okay, Briere comes in, fire sale, trade Konechny, trade Laughton, trade everybody, trade Sanheim. They tried to, but like, it would have just been so off-brand. And also, it's not good for business when you think about it. Like, these tickets are still somewhat expensive for the Flyers. Like, I'm sure you can go to like a Blackhawks Sharks game for like a few dollars, literally. Like, and there's just apathy there. And there was apathy when Chuck Fletcher was here. So getting hope and being able to, you know, enjoy these games and not get too upset when they lose. Like, this is one of the best times to be a sports fan of your team. Obviously, competing for the cup is going to be great, but like, even for these teams, like, I mean, the Leafs, they're tortured. The Devils, like, Hurricanes especially, like, they're like, all right, regular season, great, whatever. Wake me up in the Eastern Conference Final. Like, nothing actually gets your heart racing until that. And like, you're not going to live or die game by game with the Flyers now, but you can go into every game and be like, all right, this will be enjoyable. Those young players that I want to see take a step forward, and if they win, you know, maybe that's even better.
82 games is a lot of games to just not care. Like, if this was like watching these tanking teams, the games don't matter. It's just 82 games between drafts. That's it. That's the only thing that exists. And that just sounds miserable. Like, and there's no proof that it's going to work. Like, it's too early to say it's going to work, but a year and a half in, it's like, oh, maybe this isn't going to work out quite as well as we thought it would. Like, we've so blatantly stripped our teams to the studs and like screwed people in the organization to make it happen. Like, I don't know, man. I get that the biggest knock is that the Flyers don't have a clear path to acquiring like a star player. Like, we have a lot of go ahead.
I think they do, though. Like, even all those teams you named that are like tearing everything down. The Blackhawks, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks this year, no third. Ducks, 1 first-round pick, no second-round pick because they traded for Cutter Gauthier.
Us, baby.
1 pick in every round except the 6th. They have no picks. Like, in the Flyers, 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks. They could get a 4th first-round pick by trading Ristolainen. They could probably get a 5th if they trade Laughton. Like, and then you have these assets that you can trade up and get one of these top centers in the draft. You can just use your 4 first-round picks, or be like Boston did when Boston had the 3 first-round picks in a row and could have got Barzal, Connor, and whoever else was up there. Like, that could be the Flyers. That could very well be the Flyers, and they're in as good a position, if not better, than all these other. I don't know if I want to generalize and say all these other non-playoff teams, but like, I'd rather be a Flyers fan right now than Chicago, than Nashville, than Montreal, than Buffalo, than Anaheim, than San Jose is pretty fun.
I forgot about the Canadiens.
Columbus, Pittsburgh. I mean, if you're not factoring past cups, Pittsburgh, like, all of these teams outside of the playoff race below the Flyers don't have as bright of a future as the Flyers do. Obviously, having a guy like Michkov fall into your lap at 7 helps. Maybe they'll get Rybikin to fall into her laps again at around 7 to get a Russian center there. But yeah, the Flyers are on the playoff bubble, playing competitive hockey, and still have 6 picks in the top 50 in the draft. Like, that, people completely overlook that. And the second round picks aren't late picks. Once
No.
you get past like the top 15 picks, the value kind of plateaus there. And I trust the Flyers scouting department to get good picks in that second round, or if someone falls down, to make that trade up to grab somebody. So that's like, it's not like the Flyers don't have just their first round picks. They have 2 other first round picks, even if it's Colorado and Edmonton, who are going to be 25 or later. It's a first round pick, and teams put a lot of weight on that, and a lot of flexibility the Flyers have coming up.
Yeah, and within their own system currently, like, they don't have any marquee names or budding superstars like coming up, but they have good players, impact NH. They have prospects that have a clear path to becoming impact NHLers. I'm not talking like the best player on a team, but like top six forwards, top 4 defensemen. You can use those guys in trades. And I do want to just touch on 2 trades recently, the Jack Eichel trade and the Matthew Tkachuk trade, because I think people don't quite have the perception of like how acquiring those guys was not as expensive as you might think. Like Jack Eichel, the Vegas Golden Knights got Jack Eichel and a 3rd round pick for Alex Took, who is a good player. Like, he's a top sixer, but he's not a great player. Peyton Krebs, who is a 1st round pick prospect, who is quite young at that point. A 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick. Who won that trade? The Golden Knights. They got the best player in the deal. Didn't matter how much they gave up. They got the best player, and they have the cup to show for it. Matthew Tkachuk, the big one, for Jonathan Huberdeau. I think people don't really remember Huberdeau before that just dynamic season. Like, he was always a good player. He was hovering around a point per game for like 3 seasons, like just over a point a game for about 3 seasons, up till that 115 point just blowout season.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not the best player on a cup contending team. He's a very, very good top line forward, but he's not the best player on a cup contending team. Mackenzie Weegar is an underrated top pair defenseman, but like, the Panthers had Montour, Forsling, Ekblad. Like, he was surplus. They didn't need him because they had so many other guys. So it was Huberdeau, Weegar, a 1st round pick, and prospect Cole Schwint, who is no longer with the Flames. He's with the Vegas Golden Knights. Who won that trade? The Panthers did, because they got the best player available. They gave up a lot. Huberdeau was coming off that huge season, but he was also due a new contract. So the Panthers, they're like, yep, this guy's very important to our organization, but guess what? Business is business, and we got someone coming. If a superstar player of these caliber comes available, and the Flyers are well positioned to make that move. They have those impact NHLers. They have Joel Farabee. They have Tyson Forster. They have Owen Tippett. Maybe even Bobby Brink. He might still have some more in the tank. Well, I don't know. I know you love him a lot, so
I love Bobby Brink. That's my boy.
There still might be more in the tank. Morgan Frost. He's frustrating, but he is an impact NHLer. He won't be like a cup-winning player, but he's an impact player. In the system, you've got Bong, you've got Barkey, you've got Luchenko, you've got Bjarnason and Zavagrin. Like, maybe Alexei Kolosov turns into a great secondary tandem goalie, but guess what? The Flyers have Bjarnason and Zavagrin and don't need Kolosov. That's an impact NHL player that they can use in a trade. If a center or otherwise like number 1 defenseman in the vein of Matthew Tkachuk or Jack Eichel becomes available, the Flyers have more than enough assets, especially in this year's draft, to make those trades. I'm not worried about them being too scared to pull the trigger when the right player comes along. They'll make it happen. So I know the big knock against the way the Flyers are rebuilding is that they aren't going to get that high-end talent. But other NHL teams, they need impact players. And if one of their star players doesn't want to sign with them, or they feel it's not working out, whatever the case may be, they will take a proven impact player over a guy who, who knows? Because you're giving up someone who is a proven player you can't sell your fan base like, yeah, we got this guy. He could be really good. We gave up like one of our best players and we got this guy who's maybe going to be really good. No, they want someone that they can show and be like, this guy has a proven track record. He's going to be good for us, even if he's not quite as good as what we gave up.
Yeah, a few things there is that, you know, the Jack Eichel trades and Matthew Tkachuk trades. Obviously, I think whenever you get the best player in the trade and they go on to win the Stanley Cup, you're going to win. You're going to win that trade. Like there are going to be times the Flyers are definitely going to make one of the trades that you know, hypothesize. They have the pieces where they can. I mean, yeah, Farabee, Brink, Frost, prospect, picks, Forster, whatever. Like they have these guys that they can package together for a top of the line player. But with the Eichel and Tkachuk trades, there were kind of asterisks on that because Eichel was asking out because of his neck surgery.
Tkachuk didn't want to sign.
Tkachuk didn't want to sign. There was money situations there. So, I mean, Huberdeau and Weegar, people thought the Flames won that trade, I think, when Tkachuk went down. But obviously, you know, I mean, maybe if Huberdeau stays there, the Panthers still win the cup because they have such a great team. But yeah, if a top of the line player, forward, defenseman, goalie even becomes available like that, the Flyers have the assets to make that trade for them. Like this year and in the coming years. Like I could see in 2 years being able to trade, you know, someone like a Forster, someone like a Brink that maybe are a little bit more established, along with the Flyers' own first round pick or second round pick or whatever to get that established player. Because like along with those trades, like you've also seen a big one was the Ryan O'Reilly trade to the Blues.
Sabres again.
Sabres got Patrick Berglund, Sabatka, like two proven roster players. Tage Thompson, who was a former first round pick who did find his game there in Buffalo.
He did.
A first round pick and a second round pick. Like,
yeah,
that kind of sounds like a lot looking back, but the Blues got the Conn Smythe Trophy winner there for their Stanley Cup winning team. So yeah, there are plenty of options the Flyers have, and that's what the flexibility here is. Just insane what they have with their prospects, their picks, and the roster players.
You bring up an interesting point with Ryan O'Reilly. So on the one hand, we talk about Rasmus Ristolainen and him getting traded for a first. Would you prefer a 2024 or 2025 first round pick? Because if you get the 2024, that's 4 picks in one draft, which is really cool. But 2020 time. We have 3 in the 2025 draft. That's right. Would you prefer 4 picks in the 2025 draft or 3 in the 25 and 2 in the 26? Because if you get one in the 2026, it kicks the can down the road and you have a draft asset that you can use at a later date if something else comes along in the following year.
It's tough because my, short attention span mind is like, give me it this year. Give me this year. I want to have all the assets in this draft, but it would make more sense to be in 2026. It gives Briere another asset down the road. There's going to be teams falling out of it a year down the road, players becoming more available. Like and that pick the team can use to draft the player they want. Yeah. Like we've seen the Predators won Edstrom. Like we see teams covet specific prospects or specific positions. So getting this ticket that could be whatever you want, that's practically a gift card. It's like, okay, here you go. Go buy what you want with this pick. You can trade it if you want. You can use it to get whatever fits your needs. Like it's a universal gift card rather than like, okay, this player might fit what you want. Maybe if you get them and don't like them, you can trade them. But like, yeah, I kick the can down the road, whatever. Rebuild's never going to end, but that's what you have to do. I mean, keep your options open.
I absolutely take the later draft pick, 2026 or even 2027 if I can, because the Ryan O'Reilly brings up a great point. How old was he when they made that trade? He must have been like, what, 26, 27?
I think older than that. So that was 2018. He was born in 1991. So yeah, 27. There you go.
He was 27. The Flyers are not in a position to trade a bunch of assets for a 26, 27-year-old 1C. But in 2 or 3 years, they might be. And if they still have the draft capital that they're accruing now, they can use that for that trade. If like a Ryan O'Reilly becomes available in the summer of 2026 and they have a 2026 first rounder from a Risto trade, that makes things a little easier. Then they get to keep their own first round pick and trade out some contenders pick.
I will argue against the fact that the Flyers could not trade for a 27-year-old 1C right now. Like, if you can get Tage Thompson for Tippett, like 2 or 3 of these assets: Tippett, Farabee, Forster, Brink, Frost, Laughton, throw Bonk in there, a first-round pick. Like, if you can get Tage Thompson for 3 of those assets, I think I do it. Like, if you can get a big center that has shown that he can, he's having a few down years after having a great year, but given his size, given the Flyers' need for a 1C, given that would accelerate the rebuild a bit, but he'll be 29, 30 when the Flyers are actually trying to compete. I think given the fact that Michkov is a point per game player, Konechny's pacing for 100 points, like, I feel like if you get a 1C, then you can pencil Thompson in as the 1C next year, Couturier 2C, Luchenko 3C, and like Palin 4C. Like, I feel like that kind of lines things up down the middle. It depends on which combination of assets, but like, if a guy like Tage Thompson specifically, though, because $7 million is not a lot to deal with until 2030, and his no trade list is only 5 teams, so there is still some flexibility there. But I'm trying to think of other options that might become available. Like, JT Miller's too old.
I still think it's too soon. I think it's too soon to go after and commit to like a 27-year-old center.
I don't disagree that it'll be too soon, but if a 27-year-old 1C becomes available, that the team's like, all right, we're going to trade this guy this season, in season or in the off season. Those options don't become available very often. Like, obviously, you'd rather it be a 25-year-old, or you'd rather see a 27-year-old in 2 years or whatever. But if the option's there, like, it's not, you can't always go to the 1C market and make this deal. Like, if there's a 1C available and he's somewhat in your timeline, I think you go and do it.
I guess. Would you take Tage Thompson or Dylan Cousins? If we're sticking with the Sabres, which one would you prefer?
I mean, I'd prefer Thompson. He's contract or nearly identical. He is much more proven. He's 27 this year, so in 2030 he'll be 33. Like, that's fine. He's a point per game player this year so far. 56 points last year, 94 points 2 years ago. Like, yeah, put him 6'6". Keith Jones is gonna love him. Like, yeah, put him between Michkov and Tippett, and that's a dynamic line right there.
Okay.
I'm trying to scope out some other top trade boards to see who else might be available. Josh Norris. I mean, he's been. I know he's had the injury-prone name tag put on him.
I don't think he is a 1C. I think he caps out as like a real good 2C personally.
I completely agree. He's 25, so he is more in the timeline. 20 points this year in 30 games. Had 55 in the 2021-22 season, so that's still a few years removed there. But like, yeah, that's going to be the options for the Flyers in season trades for centers. Maybe they, like Nazem Kadri is too old. Brock Nelson's a UFA. Like, there's not many centers available, which is why if Thompson's somehow available, Briere has to go out and make a good deal with his former franchise. He absolutely has to. If it's Cousins, I'm less convinced, but it's going to be definitely a lesser price as well. And the cap situation, the contract definitely does hurt, but I feel like the Flyers are going to be able to have the cap flexibility in the next few years.
Okay.
Great point here from this user on Twitter, 𝙏𝙒𝙏𝙏𝙏. We missed out on Nate just waiting. Imagine if we had given him an offer sheet last year, mid-season for him. We would be in a great spot. Yeah. Nate just has been insane for the Hurricane. I think he should be in the Hart Trophy conversation. He's not, but I mean, he's
not yet
stepped his game up. I think he's also playing wing though.
He's a winger.
Yeah, he's a winger now. So I feel like that's kind of the reason the Flyers didn't want to add another, right-hand shot right winger.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be having a season like this if he was still playing center. I think being on the wing, I think his season is a product of him being on the wing and not at center. So yeah, the Flyers would probably have gotten a really great player, but again, it's a dynamic winger. Doesn't doesn't fix the immediate issue, which is we don't have any centers.
Same thing we were talking about with Eurocheck. Like, sure, it was a good player, it would be a good asset to have, but that's not what the Flyers need right now.
Doesn't fix the most glaring void on the team.
Another good point from old Cuzzy here. Trade for a 1C ASAP. Shortage of centers in the league today. Need to get one sooner than later. He basically said, Joe, you're wrong. Horrible opinion. If Tage Thompson is available, go get him.
I'll stick by my hot takes. I'll stand by my hot takes.
He's definitely no Tim Stützle, but he's Tage Thompson.
He is Tage Thompson. Man, that would be a lot of fun to just see Tage rip a clapper from the circles on the power play.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of into it, man. I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be like, no, this is stupid. We wait. But
I heard Friedman say on the most recent podcast that like he thinks Briere is one of the more active GMs in like, okay, what's out there? How can I improve my team? What's out there? What's out there? So if Buffalo is shopping Dylan Cousins, I can see him saying, what about the other center making $7 million a year there? If you need to make a big shakeup, like sure, maybe you overpay in the form of a Farabee, a Frost, and like a first round pick, or like even adding like a bonk to that, but you get a 1C.
Do you go back to the Ducks? Like I know Zegras is out and injured right now, but what if they're shopping Mason McTavish?
I would love McTavish. I would love Carlson. I don't think they're gonna.
They wouldn't trade Carlson, but
McTavish would have to be the guy. I think he's been hurt this year. He's having a down year. 12 points in 23 games.
He's kind of struggled to take that next step. Like he had 43 points as a 20-year-old and then 42 as a 21-year-old, but
he only played 64 games last year. Yeah,
exactly. It was 20 odd fewer, or almost 20 fewer games. And he's missed some time this year. So he is kind of improving, but not to the point where it's like, is this a guy that they need to commit to? Because I think he's due a new contract. Let me pull this up real quick on Puckpedia. Yes, Mason McTavish is a RFA this summer, so he needs a contract. Zegras has one more year on his. But
I'd go back to the Ducks. I mean, it would be like the opposite of a Cutter for Drysdale trade. You trade him back like a defenseman or a pick for a center. But I'd absolutely go back to Anaheim there. I think Buffalo. I think there's a pretty good chance the Flyers trade with Buffalo something this season, either Buffalo or Ottawa. I feel like that finally comes to fruition here with,
Also, just to circle back to this like state of the rebuild across the league, Anaheim, Buffalo have both been in the midst of rebuilds forever, and they have traded out pieces of their rebuild in the process. Like, oh yeah, the Ducks are going to build around Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale. Well, guess what? One of them is on the Flyers now, and the other one's probably on his way out of town. Like, I don't know. That doesn't seem all that successful to me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Another, I don't think he's a center at this point. Might just be a winger. Looking at his face-off numbers, very down, 35% for his career. But Kirby Dach is a guy who got drafted from Chicago, traded to Montreal. I've read whispers, things about him. Might not be. Montreal's going to look for a shakeup at some point. His career high is 38 points in 58 games, so he could be a guy that maybe gets a change of scenery. Flyers always like those big bodies, but maybe that's changing with Danny Briere at the helm. You never know.
I don't know. I'd take Dylan Cousins over Kirby Dach. I think if those were the options.
I agree, but
Pinto, yes, old Cuzzy is in my corner. The beans, give me the beans.
I would want Shane Pinto too. That's fine by me.
But I'm not giving up a ton of assets to get him. Like he's an unproven third line center that could be more. Like that's there's a lot there. Also, apparently has a gambling.
That's fine. I mean, it'll be perfect for our Bet Online segments. Maybe we can get him on the podcast there. But you have to consider Cousins is under contract for $7 million through 2030. Kirby Dach is $3.3 million. He's an RFA at the end of next season. So that would be like a change of scenery move where maybe the Flyers see what they're able to get out of him. Not that he's like necessarily being shopped, but just thinking about other young center-ish players that the Flyers could use.
Yeah. Should we do our game predictions? I feel like we've beat the rebuild stuff to death today.
We have, but there's one more thing. I just threw it in the sheet there. I don't think we touched on it last week. I'm not sure if it had been said then.
No,
but
it hadn't.
John Tortorella has confirmed, according to a tweet from one Charlie O'Connor from PHLY, Tortorella confirms that Kolosov is a number 2 goalie and Fedotov is a number 3. He said he's had a conversation with Fedotov about it already. He's not sure how long they're going to go with 3 goalies on the NHL roster, but that's the current hierarchy. That was on the 12th, which was Thursday before their game against the Red Wings when Kolosov got the start. And
outstanding play by him too on that game. It was real good.
Yeah, he was huge. And you know what? He's earned it. He's earned it over his past, had a bit of a slower start to the season here in the NHL, but for all the stuff we were talking about him, not being good enough to demand this time in the NHL, over his past 6 games, 4-1-1, 901 save percentage, 15 goals against. So, and yeah, 2 of those games were Florida scored 4 goals in the power play, and Boston had 4 goals against him.
One of those was in relief too, right? Like they pulled Fedotov and put him in.
Yeah, that was the Florida game.
Right?
Yeah. He did get the loss though in that one. I guess because the Flyers took the lead and then.
So I would put him at 4-0-1 in games he started. I think that's a more.
Yeah,
I think I'd say that's carries a bit more weight.
Mm-hmm. And he hasn't gotten like the easiest assignments either. Like his first start was against Montreal on a back-to-back. Played against Boston, played at Carolina, against the Avs, got the win against the Blackhawks, win in Nashville, win in St. Louis, loss in relief against Florida, loss in Boston in that awful overtime game, and then huge win against Detroit there. He had a few big saves throughout the game, especially late after the Red Wings, made it 2-1, and it was, almost came down again and tied it up, which would have been very typical Flyers.
Thank God for the dick trick. Garnet Hathaway, a real good teammate to give that puck back to Scotty Lots.
Yes. All right. Yeah, we can get into our predictions for the upcoming week. Make sure you check out the Flyers 5 with Steve 𝙏𝙏𝙏𝙏𝙏, usually published on Monday, to get more information about these teams. The Flyers are Wednesday night in Detroit, Thursday night back at home against the Kings. That's a 7:30 start. And then the 21st, their final game before the New Year against the Blue Jackets.
Yep.
So what do you think? What do you think for the Red Wings game in Detroit?
Well, we saw them win once, so they got to lose this one, right? No, I'm kidding. I think they can. I think they can pull that one out again. Maybe they'll actually show up and like not be dum-dums for most of it. I'll say 4-2. No dick trick though.
Yeah. I think 4-2 is a pretty good prediction there. They did beat Toronto last night 4-2 and are also off until Wednesday. So we'll have 2 rested teams going at each other. So maybe we'll get a high scoring game here. They've played a few 5-4 games, 6-5 against the Sabres there. So maybe we'll get a back and forth affair if Cam Talbot and whoever the Flyers start aren't quite as sharp. So look for the over there for you gambling people out there.
I would also take that.
Yeah. All right. And they're come right back home the next night to face the Kings. A 7:30 start there. I'm not quite as confident in that one. Kings are in the middle of a road trip. They've been, great since pretty much since Thanksgiving there, since the 23rd. They've only lost twice, 8-2-0. So yeah, I think the Kings are gonna play a boring hockey game and probably beat the Flyers like 3-1.
I think 3-2 overtime Kings, but I still think they're frauds. I just am not buying it yet. Like they're gonna get to the first round and get trounced by the Oilers. It is written, scripted. But 3-2 overtime Kings. Sorry, boys.
Yeah, I think the Kings are a good team, but I don't know if they're built for the playoffs there. All right, the final game.
I was going to just say Quentin Byfield has had like a really down year. If you're talking like centers that might need a change of scenery, that'd be fun.
Well, I think he started at center this year and may have moved back to wing on the top line.
They move him back and forth. Sometimes he's center, sometimes he's the wing.
He's 3C right now with Warren Fogle and Tanner Jeannot. So
yikes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the Blue Jackets, Saturday night at home. It's the holiday spectacular for the Flyers there. So make sure you get to your seats early to watch Gritty dance around in a Santa suit.
Cool.
Yeah, I think another big win for the Flyers here. Hopefully, I'm going to go 5-3 again. 5-3 over the Jackets.
I think this one's going to be wild, and it's going to be like 7-5 Flyers. Like I think it's just going to be a barn burner. Everybody's like trying to get home for the holidays, so they're just like, let's get out of here, and they just pour on the offense and play zero defense. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, Columbus now has lost 6 of their past 7. Did good overtime last 2 against the Ducks and the Capitals there. So,
well, losing to the Ducks is never good.
No, it's not. All right, that's our predictions for the upcoming 3 games here. I'm not going to do a tankathon because the Flyers are right now, right in the playoff spot. Money Puck has them at 50%. Our good friends at Bet Online, once again, shout out them. They have them at plus 350 to make the playoffs, which is an implied probability of 22%. I feel like that's
okay.
I feel like the Flyers have a better chance than that, but it's a matter of if the Rangers free fall is going to continue because they've been quite bad.
Oh man, you hate to see it.
You
hate to see it.
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps it up, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Joe, where can people find you?
You can find me at jfdmarini.bsky.social. You can also find me at jfdmarini on Twitter, but like I'm really not over there too much anymore. I can't wait to just for one day to be like, I'm done, and then I can just delete it and be done with it because everybody moved over to Blue Sky, and it'll be grand. Because the last time I opened up Twitter, first thing I see is an ad for like an RFK, like some kind of sales pitch, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, I'm done. But anyway, Gilbs, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Blue Sky at RyanGilbert.bsky.social. I am still posting some more viral clips on Twitter, so at rgilbertsop for that. But Blue Sky tends to get more of the stuff there. Of course, make sure you follow Broad Street Hockey as well on both Twitter and Blue Sky, and follow the Broad Street Hockey Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. All right. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Go Flyers.